Yes, it's your Chiefs. Yes, it is the offseason. I'm sorry to tell you, but we have a way forward. We're going to talk about changes, what's coming, what's going, what Seth found when he reviewed Patrick Mahomes, and how do you recover from this loss. Welcome to RGR Football. Hey, how are you, Seth?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing better than I was a couple days ago. Bummer of a game. You and I haven't had a chance to talk.
No, it's been busy, folks. He is Seth Kaiser of the Substack fame, Real Minnesota Chiefs Fan. Let me see if I can get that up there because I should have had that queued already. That's where you can find it. I'm Ryan Tracy. You've seen me before. If you know this channel, you're probably finding it. But if you're not one of us yet, Chiefs fans, click the like and the sub and the bell notification. That's how you find more stuff out. And yes, we're going to be doing this through the offseason. I'm down in Mobile, Alabama. You've seen me on and off this week from here because there's a lot going on and there's draft picks coming. We're going to get to that in later shows. I'm going to give you my breakdowns here starting maybe tomorrow. I'll try to do something tonight for you to have in the morning that we can go through. But we have to get to the aftermath that we haven't talked about, Seth. And that is still a surprise to me. Did it catch you off guard, the tale of two halves?
It was bizarre. It was just such a weird thing. Watching the team play so well on both sides of the ball and then falter, especially on offense. I know people want to talk about the defense, and there's some stuff to talk about, certainly. But really what you saw in the second half was a defense that eventually just wore out. It just wasn't able to keep doing that drive after drive after drive. And that's what they needed. What they needed the defense to do was basically shut out the Bengals, who have an excellent offense, because the Chiefs offense was doing nothing. And we saw losses like that in the Alex Smith era at times. And we saw a lot of more in like the Matt Castle era and that kind of stuff, where the defense just eventually gives way. I was talking to my boss, he's a big Bears fan, and he says he's seen that game, like in terms like the defense does fine for a while, and then eventually gives way, and then people get mad because the defense gives up 2 touchdowns in the fourth or something. And it's like you just can't ask your defense to hold in the modern NFL drive after drive after drive after drive. So that was a bummer. I'm still surprised they lost that game. It's good on Cincinnati. They took advantage. They had the opportunity. I think it was largely self-inflicted, but Cincinnati took advantage of those. They made the big plays. They turned missed tackles into touchdowns. They did what they had to do, and good on them. The Chiefs should have won it, and they didn't. And and that's just part of it. And that's one of the things. You and I talked all year about margin of error, and the Chiefs have been flirting with margin of error all year with some of these self-inflicted wounds. And so the biggest thing, though, and what we didn't expect, and you and I talked about this last week, is there's always this given that Patrick Mahomes is going to be great full-time playoffs. And this game, he was great in the first half, and he made a few great plays in the second half, but was not great. He made some really poor plays, too. And the Chiefs, as they currently are, were unable to overcome that performance. Yeah. And that's where I think you got to look at moving forward is you should not need your quarterback to be incredible for all 60 minutes. The Bengals didn't need Joe Burrow to be incredible. They needed him to make some great plays, but he didn't need to be great for them to win. The Chiefs kind of did, although him being actively bad was hurtful on some snaps, and we'll talk about it. And I wrote about that. I know that's what we're leading into. A week after I broke down the best game I've ever seen a quarterback play, Mahomes comes back with a game that's the weirdest I've ever seen a quarterback play.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the tale of two halves thing, So, there's a lot of directions I could approach it from. This one's actually unlocked for everyone as well. It's entitled Patrick Mahomes versus the Bengals. What? How? Why? Because it's just such a weird performance. So what I did this time is I actually broke down the charting of the snaps to first half and second half. And yeah, it was the first half was awesome. He was really that great. the whole time. And so I thought what I would do, because people can go read it. I was curious if you had any questions or anything that you wanted me to shoot for, or if you want me to just kind of roll through a couple of the main takeaways.
I have one question, and then I'd love your synopsis and your takeaways, because I'm still, because of the schedule, I haven't even rewatched the game yet. I had to get ready and get on a plane, that kind of thing. So it just seemed to me like, and it comes down to, for me, the last drive, particularly in the red zone before the first half. And I really feel that it let indecision creep in. And at that point, I think for the first time, certainly in the playoffs, first time we've ever seen Patrick Mahomes actually fluster himself about the fact that he missed what he needed to do.
Sure. I think that's fair. What's interesting to me is, upon rewatch, I don't hate that final play of the first half as much as I did. When you watch it, he's reading Eli Apple. I don't think it's an actual RPO. I don't think there's any reason they'd be handing the ball off up the middle. And even if they do, people have done screenshots of this big hole McKinnon could have supposedly run through. But you got to understand, that's after Mahomes has pulled the ball up and the defenders have seen he doesn't have the ball and they move. There were two guys that would have filled that hole had McKinnon taken it. So the only player he seems like he's reading is Apple, who's with Hill in motion. They're in a race to the sideline. Hill's actually a few yards ahead of him and a few yards closer to the line to the end zone. I think Mahomes has seen Hill win that so many times. So I kind of get the thought process there to throw it. Now, I still think Eli was enough in position that maybe, you still don't, you just don't even chance it and you just fire it into the stands, take the 3. But that's not actually where I pinpoint Mahomes is like where things really got jacked up. Because the ensuing drives, so they had halftime, they came out after halftime and they went 3 and out. Two plays in a row that really stand out to me is where you start to see Mahomes acting real different. He on second and relatively long, he throws a pass that would have gotten them around midfield to Tyreek Hill. Contested. You can argue that the guy got there a little early. He kind of did. But Hill doesn't bring it in, right? Contested catch situation. And the Bengals players made a few of those. And Hill didn't. And that's a superstar catch moment, right? Very next play, Mahomes on a bad snap from Creed, that just shows how weird a game it is, because Creed doesn't make mistakes. Like he's been a machine this year. Mahomes, you'll notice, doesn't get flustered, calmly scoops it up. Kelsey isn't really open, but even though his feet like glitch on him it was kind of a weird thing. It's like he stumbled over something or something weird. He still floats the ball out ahead of Kelsey to a spot where Kelsey, he's got to stretch and extend, but he's got both hands on it and he still doesn't bring it in. Again, contested catch, tough catch, but a catch you're supposed to make if you're Travis Kelsey. So he had back-to-back throws, Travis Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, kind of fail. They punt the ball away. And it was the ensuing drive where I saw the beginning of some real problems. Like where it was like, well, this is kind of weird. And so there's a couple things to kind of, well, you said you had 2 questions. Sorry.
You covered it. Go.
Okay. There's a couple things. So that would be the first thing that I would tell people, that I don't really agree with the narrative that's out there. Because what I always try to do, I want to inform people on things that maybe they missed, or maybe what I think might be flying under the radar. The first is that I don't think it was that end of half snap. The decision I don't entirely agree with, but I see what Mahomes was thinking there. He gave Hill a chance to make a play, and Hill didn't. Should he have fired it into the stands? Maybe. Should he have tucked the ball and run to the right corner of the end zone? I think he could have. There was a corner relatively in position, but maybe I think the safest thing would have been to just fire it into the sideline and say, okay, let's kick a field goal and go up 24-10 at half. That changes a lot of things about the game. But I see what he was doing. He gave Hill a chance to make a play, and Hill had the chance. Hill did the backwards thing a little bit there. For one, he turned over his left shoulder, which I thought was weird, because if he turns over his right and continues running, Hill can put it a little out in front of him, and I think he sprints into the end zone no problem. The entire setup of the play felt weird, but he gave his guy a chance. Whatever. The next drive, he gave his guys a couple chances with a pair of good throws. They don't work out. It's the very next drive where the defense, remember, they forced a punt.
Yeah.
They were still up 21-10 at this point. This was a chance for the Chiefs. All they really needed was a drive that really even got to midfield and chewed up 3 or 4 minutes of the clock. and the game would have felt very different. But the very first play, this was their shot. In my opinion, this was the turning point of the game. 1st and 10, they're on the 5 or 6 yard line. They run a Mills concept deep with, well, it's not quite Mills because Hill kind of runs a go/post, but I'm going to call it a Mills because it's the same concept. So the Bengals had a single high safety back. They had a guy in man on Hardman who's playing outside leverage. They had a guy on Hill who's playing outside leverage. So the deep safety, he's got to make a choice. Of course, he chooses Hill. I don't know if you've rewatched this snap at all.
I have not.
Hardman ends up, and if you're on right now, you can check out. It's it's like midway down through the article. Hardman ends up wide open on the 30-yard line. And when I say wide open, his corner's playing outside leverage, thinking he's got help over the top of the safety. And so it was one of those, when Mills works, it just is a beauty. And this was because Kelsey ran a shorter route underneath and kept the attention of the underneath defenders. There is no one within 5 yards of Hardman, and no one's running the correct direction. A good throw, guaranteed touchdown with Hardman's speed. An average throw, 99% touchdown. A bad throw, probably a 25-yard gain. The only way this doesn't make it happen is a horrific throw, or if Mahomes doesn't throw, and he doesn't. Instead, and he's reading the safety early. I don't know if he sees the safety. I don't know what he sees here. I genuinely don't, because I see the safety turn his hips, and then Mahomes steps way up into the pocket. I think he's a little nervous because Brown's guy's looping around him, but the blocking's good. And Mahomes walks all the way up into Trey Smith to where he bumps himself and then throws it over the top to Clyde for a short gain. Clyde's pretty much covered. He had to shake a tackle to really get a little past the line of scrimmage. Right. That was the first play where I was like, well, that's weird, because that's what I chart as a missed shot.
Oh, okay.
And it's rare for Mahomes to miss shots. If anything, he's overly aggressive. And that right there, that was the play. That was the we're stop putting a halt to this whole thing, because you hit Hardman for a 95-yard touchdown, and that just sucks all the wind out of the sails. And if you don't think confidence matters, I don't know what to tell you.
Right, yeah.
Momentum is not something that can be found analytically, and you always see guys talk about, oh, well, if momentum were real, they couldn't have scored there. They wouldn't have. Just confidence does matter. Does it matter every time? Nope. Does it matter sometimes? Yep. And you can't predict when it will. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
It's a difference maker.
And so this was a play that he's made a million times, and he didn't. And that was the start of some weird snaps from Mahomes. And part of me wonders if between the end of half being discouraging, the next drive, his two main guys let him down. The next drive, he misses a read that he should have made. And then you started seeing him pressing.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of talk about, and so that's one thing to start. The starting point of all this was different than what I think the common narrative is. The other thing is this idea that Cincinnati really, and I bought into this, Cincinnati really did something by dropping 8 and rushing 3. They did that in the first half too, and Mahomes eviscerated it several times.
See, that's what I need to go back and watch again. Like, how many snaps did you get of a 3-man rush?
There were quite a few, and there were more in the second half. Like half their snaps in the second half were like that. Yep. There were only 3 or 4 in the first half. But Mahomes, the first play of the final drive of the first half, where he had a deep ball to Tyreek Hill down the right side, that was a rush 3. And you know what Mahomes did? He just stood there. Just stood there in the pocket, let his offensive line dominate, because they're built to dominate in that situation, and they did. And then he just waited for Hill to run to the open zone, found it. Easy. In the second half, there were multiple times he ran himself into pressure against a 3-man rush. There's once that he did it on third down where a sack was entirely his fault because he didn't need to go anywhere. And it killed opportunities for the Chiefs. You had a sack on third down. You had him running and having to throw the ball away where everyone was winning. You didn't need to do those things. But you also had weird things on where his process was so sped up. And that was another thing that I noted. There was another play which
not because of necessarily pressure, right?
Not because of pressure. Right. So, I mean, one of the plays that I focused on here on a second down where he ended up getting sacked on third down because Orlando Brown lost to Trey Hendrickson quickly. Hendrickson's a really good player. Brown, by and large, won that matchup. Thumbs up. Brown, by and large, won that matchup fairly handily, but he lost on a crucial third down. So that's another thing. That third down sack, that's not on Mahomes. That was Orlando Brown. And so it's not like the entire second half was, just Mahomes sucked, and that's the end of it. There was more to it than that, and I'll get to that in a second. But that second down, right before that play, they were playing a zone coverage. Kelsey carried one of the underneath defenders with him, and he had Byron Pringle for a gain over the middle of the field that would have been a first down. And he hit 2 throws just like it in the first half. Identical scenario, only with one more guy in coverage, actually, in the first half. And he just didn't hit it. He didn't pull the trigger. And then, obviously, the goal line. And so, basically, I'm not trying to do like a horror show for people right now. I'm walking through the individual plays to make a point about the overall. Everyone knows about 3rd and 9 because Barnwell tweeted about it. A lot of people have tweeted about it. 3rd and 9, final drive of regulation. He had Kelsey over the middle. He also had Pringle over the middle because Kelsey carried some of the coverage away. And these are throws. And then he had Pringle again, actually, when he drifted right, which he didn't need to do.
Right.
Because there was no pressure. And by drifting right, he gave – so, picture you're lined up just straight ahead, and the spy is beyond here. So now pretend like my microphone right here or my buy drink right here. This is Tooney and Trey Smith, or maybe it was Humphrey. I can't remember. Or it would have been Humphrey and Trey Smith, I'm pretty sure. They're double teaming a guy right here. The spy is behind him right here. And by doing – wrong way. By doing this, that spy, he then drifts as well the same direction. And then you could see him say, well, I've got a straight shot now. I might as well sprint right at him. Because otherwise, with the blockers in the way, he'd have to sprint around them, and Mahomes would just bail the other direction. And so then, while he's sprinting at him, Mahomes is moving, and Pringle correctly comes up from the end zone. There's another throw he could have made for a touchdown there, and he didn't.
That was the one I think was most egregious and stood out to fans most.
It was so unusual. And I think at that point in the game, by then, I think Mahomes' own awareness of the game situation got to him. He knew they were they were down 3. He knew that the worst case scenario, if he doesn't throw a pick, is overtime and a coin flip, which is dangerous but doable. A pick loses the game, I think. And I think that's why he didn't pull the trigger. And the reason why I think that is because everyone's talking about that, but not a lot of people are talking about second down, where, for one thing, they could have just run the ball. They only got a yard or 2 on first down, but they could have just run the ball, kept the clock moving, and moved forward to where you've got 3rd and 3 or 3rd and whatever, you know what I mean? To
Absolutely.
Where you can still threaten to do multiple things. Instead, they ended up with 3rd and 9 because he took a sack. The reason he took a sack, though, the play call was fine. They ran a play action or an RPO. I can't quite tell which because the way the offensive line is blocking doesn't help me as much as it normally does. McCole Hardman fakes like he's staying in the block, sprints towards the front left corner of the end zone. The corner does a good job, doesn't bite on it, but he's out leveraged. And Mahomes has made this throw, and I actually did a screenshot of it, which is not always super handy. But you can see that he's got Hardman to where if he makes a throw to him, you can put it in a place the defender can't get it, and he might get tackled short of the sticks, but it's going to gain you yardage.
Yeah.
And Mahomes, again, didn't pull the trigger. He clutched it, brought it down, took a sack. And I think he was just playing hyper-conservative at the end. I really do.
And at the end of the day, if you're going to play conservative, you got to support it conservatively by running the ball, by doing those things that grind out first downs. And I think what he's always relied on is the fact that on any given play, he can move the chains. Either with his legs or with any completion to any receiver, because generally, even the backs at that point are uncovered enough that they're going to gain it to reset the downs. And I think at that point, when he had to shrink within himself, whether it was crisis confidence, frustration from the first half, or just like you said, this mismatch of misfirings, in the end, it just made him too conservative to the point that that reliance on one big play to move the sticks and reset your downs went out the window.
And that's the thing is you got to play it one way or the other, because he can get away with the reliance on one big play because he's great at it. But then you got to pull the trigger. You can't both. You can't play conservative and not execute the conservative stuff. That's what got Alex Smith in trouble at times when the simpler stuff, not simpler, but when the quick stuff wasn't available and he didn't quite know what he was seeing in front of him. He couldn't execute that, and then he didn't have another thing to fall back on. Mahomes does. He would have been better off just playing schoolyard style the entire second half.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to play contained and doing, and he had a couple of inaccurate throws. I think, honest to God, I think he just had the yips a little bit. Not like, oh, I'm nervous of the moment or anything like that, but I think it got into his head and he was trying to play a way that isn't always comfortable for him. And that's he'll work on that. And we've got a huge sample size of him getting past mistakes and doing awesome. And then we've got this half of this game. And here's the interesting thing to me: all the yips, all the everything. He drove them down the field with a series of good reads and good throws late in the fourth. Then he had those two plays that I really think the situation. I think had they had a tied game, I think he makes those throws.
Yeah.
But then also it's just worth noting the overtime drive doesn't get a lot of attention. That last throw down the left side to Tyreek Hill was a dime, and Hill jumped a little early. And Bates made an incredible play.
Necessary.
Say again?
And my only problem with it is it wasn't necessary.
The throw?
Again, could have just taken enough to move the sticks.
And I you know what? I didn't catch anyone open there. Like
No.
he might have had someone on the backside, but he dropped a dime in the spot where his guy could grab it and Hill didn't. And had Hill just made a contested catch there, and again, Bates made a great play, but if Hill doesn't mistime his jump a little, or just makes a stronger catch, because he let it come to him a little bit still too, and snatches that ball out of the air, we're all talking about the Grim Reaper this week, not watching those guys play, practice for the Pro Bowl. So,
and Judge, I know you have a question. We're going to get to it in a second.
Yes, we're gonna get there. And I would just say, so the reason I'm giving all this information is to just note a couple things. One, it really did look like it was a combination. I wouldn't even call it pressing to try to make the big play. It was not trusting everything around him, including himself. And that's amateur psychology. I have no idea the why. Maybe one day he'll talk about it. Maybe he got hurt. I don't know. He looked healthy, but I just know the what. And the what was he wasn't pulling the trigger the way he was in the first half. It wasn't anything magical the Bengals did. He just wasn't pulling the trigger, and his pocket presence went kaput.
Yeah.
And so they had opportunities. And so people can blame Andy Reid. They should for certain things. Like he should have seen what was going on and said, okay, you know what? This second drive or this third drive of the half, we're just going to run the ball 3 times. And if we don't get a first down, fine, that sucks. But if we do, great. But either way, we're going to let Mahomes take a series and just regroup. Mm-hmm. And because that mental aspect, you got to always be on, and giving him a drive to just, maybe that matters because he is not a machine. He's a man. So that's one thing, though, like the passing concepts and stuff. There was stuff there to be had. Mahomes did play poorly, but it was also a team offensive failure too. Because had Kelsey made the play that he was given there, now all of a sudden, you're beyond the 50-yard line, 1st and 10, new set of downs, moving again up 21-10. Had Hill caught either of those to him, similar situations. Had Brown not lost on that third down. The thing about it was that when your quarterback struggles, all those mistakes become exponentially more important. And that's why you end up, when you have like an Alex Smith or even like a Kirk Cousins or whatever, that's why you end up talking about the rest of the team so much, because those mistakes matter so much more when your quarterback isn't playing great. And I would put forth to people that the Chiefs needed Mahomes to be great rather than just make a few great plays. And they need to be able to get away from that. They need to be able to say, okay, with us spotted 11 points, we can do enough to eke it out if he's struggling a little.
Yeah.
So,
and that comes back to rebuilding the defense, to giving him a third weapon in the pass game. A number of things, though, so we're going to get to that. I know that you guys have heard the news. Mike Kafka is gone. Now the OC for the New York Giants, he's going to work for Dable. We will get into that. We're going to run through your questions first. I see a number of super chats. We appreciate your support.
Yes, thank you, everyone. So you're the real ones for being here tonight, because it's a tough week.
Absolutely. It certainly is. I mean, we're under 200 for the first time on this show ever. So thank you, you hardcore fans. We are very happy to see you. Stevie Keys, obviously, is a contributor to this channel. And thank you, Stevie. You can look for more from him soon. What is the Lord of the Rings reference that the game reminded you of?
I would say this was the battle of unnumbered tears in the Silmarillion, because there were mistakes that led to it that could have been avoided, and it made everything else for naught.
I love it when you make me feel like less of a geek. I
Ah!
didn't even know that reference, and I've read the book. Oh, good Lord. Okay, thank you, Stevie. Thank you, Judge. And this is what you were just alluding to. Judge has a fair point. Can you still use the Grim Reaper nickname?
I don't know. I think a lot of it'll depend on what happens next year. I think that was tough because we were finally on the cusp of a really great nickname. And even if he'd lost the Super Bowl, I think we still could have used it. I might still. We'll see how it goes next year.
I am going to speak it into existence. I will use it because I think he's still in there. I think it's a which one is that? I can't remember which one's Jekyll and which one is Hyde, but it's Patrick and the Reaper and two halves of one being is what I'm thinking. You just got to get it so that the guy you want takes over. That's
right. And can I point something out to people, because there's a lot of conversations about legacy and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind that in Tom Brady's first however many years starting, because I had someone say to me, well, Tom Brady never loses that game. He literally did. They lost a 21-3 comeback. I think it was to Manning's Colts, I want to say.
Yeah.
In 06, I think it was.
Sure.
Brady has had some brutal losses. Brady has taken a sack fumble at an absolute worst time. Brady has had some brutal losses. Welcome to being a perennial Super Bowl contender, because that means every year you're probably going to be one of the top 4 teams, maybe one of the top 8 teams. And that means you're going to take some brutal losses sometimes because the teams are so good. But I would just note, no one was talking about Tom Brady. They were maybe talking about a little, but there was a lot of Manning versus Brady debate until the latter part of Brady's career. So let's maybe give Pat to like year 10 before we start really talking about this stuff. Because again, until Brady hit like year 16, 17, and they had that new swath of Super Bowls, most people were like, I'd still take Montana because he was more responsible, because it was largely the defense with that first trio of Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So let's just give Pat a minute. Let's just see what happens in future years.
I mean, we have plenty of time to get to that. It's not going to be a problem. And Aaron, I appreciate you. That is perfectly okay. And I want to be honest, because the kingdom is hurting, and I want to point that out. We're going to rebound, and just as soon as I said that, we're up over 200 now. So that's exactly the way that this works. It takes a little bit of time. It's not just for the fan base. It's for the team itself. This will take time for them to straighten out, to get back to, oh, it's not just a bad day. I think the alarm bells need to go off a little bit earlier if you're Patrick Mahomes yourself. You have to be able to find whatever it is, like you said, Seth, a lack of faith in some aspect of the game that is there to help you. You have to find whatever it is, latch on to it faster. I feel, again, he just waits a little bit long because he's always had this ability to just unleash it at the drop of a dime.
Yep.
And you know what? The NFL will catch up to everybody. There are coordinators all over this league that are good at specifically attacking your strengths and certainly capitalizing on your weaknesses. It will continue. EB to interview with the Saints, Rooney Rule or legit? I just found out about this thanks to Seth before we started the show. So how do you feel, Seth?
I don't know. It's impossible to say at this point. I guess we'll find out. I don't want to be in that position where, like, well, if they don't hire him, it wasn't legit, because that's not fair. But he's been on a lot of interviews. I think he's earned a shot. It's a bummer in terms of the timing, because they've lost Mike Kafka, and I firmly, I'm in the camp Andy Reid is the offense, but I want as many smart minds around Reid as possible. And Kafka has been the OC heir apparent for years. Yeah. It's just Bieniemy. They figured he'd get hired, I think, a couple of years ago. Andy Reid has said as much. He's like, I assumed he'd have been hired years ago. So now I think it would be good for the team if Bieniemy didn't get the job, but I'm rooting for him. So I'm conflicted there.
And folks, I'll try to get one of my buddies from Locked On to come on here as well, so that we can discuss this. I'm not sure, Seth, do you know when that interview is set for?
They were saying that it could be Saturday.
Okay, cool. Then I'll try to get with Ross here. And you guys know Ross Jackson, who covers Locked On Saints. Sorry. I'll try to get him on here, too. He should enjoy the lack of format, I think, a little bit. But I would think that because the Saints organization is pretty straightforward in having to go find their heir apparent, I'm guessing it's more legit than Rooney Rule. I'll just say that, Stevie. And thank you to Judge for the previous one as well. Nate Dogg, thank you, as always. Judge with another one. Thank you, Judge. Did Mahomes forget to take his Adderall before the second half?
That's mean. It was weird. It was genuinely weird. And I the only explanation I have is mental. That he got into a bit of a funk. Oh, and another point I wanted to make, when your offense is going 3 and out or when you have turnovers, you don't get a lot of chances to turn that around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean when I say if someone else had just made a play or two, or Andy had let the offensive line kind of be the weapon for a little bit, because that's where I think Andy's chief culpability is there. I think if Mahomes has more opportunities, I think he snaps out of it. Yeah. But the problem with going 3 and out is you're out of opportunities, and you end up running like 12 plays over the course of a quarter and a half. That's problematic.
And you gave up that 8-minute drive on one hand. So I've seen a lot of complaints about the defense. Well, L'Jarius gave you the ball back.
Yep.
You had the opportunity. So for me, that balances out and then some, the 8-minute drive. And to tell you the truth, at the end of the day, it puts more pressure, more culpability on the other offensive weapons that didn't come through to help him and wasted that turnover that Snead worked pretty hard for. He certainly had a tough time with the graft strength there. So he was holding on for so damn long. But there's a lot to go into that. And they're going to have to clear it. We're going to get to that in the offseason. And you guys, I think the Kafka departure, what we're going to see with EB, whether the fact he gets the job or not, that's going to be very crucial in what happens here. We'll talk about options. If we don't get a question on tonight, we'll definitely talk options next week when I get home. Cody, thank you for your support. Is Matthew projecting the comments from media onto fans? He keeps saying the fan base doesn't like him, but only references clickbait by media outlets. I don't have any idea. I think the fan base likes him just as much as anybody else that's played the position. I won't say he's Eric Berry level, but the vast majority of Chiefs fans want him here. I think the team wants him here if he can perform and maintain his level.
I generally agree with that. I think that as someone who has a fraction of the number of followers he has and gets occasionally swept up in people being jerks or whatever, I can't imagine what it's like dealing with that every day. That said, if he were to ask me, and he never would, and why would he? Because he's done an awesome job running his own life. I would say, I don't know why you bother with the social media stuff, because he does seem to take it personally. And I get it. People are saying crappy stuff about you, but people suck on the internet. And now, hey, am I being a hypocrite here because I've been dragged into it? Absolutely. But I'm on the internet, so I'm allowed to be a hypocrite.
But you're so good at it, too.
Oh, yes. And so I just think I would assume, and who knows, I would assume if negotiations between him and the Chiefs were going super well, that maybe he wouldn't be as bothered by some of this stuff. But I also think that the team, if they are hesitant to drop whatever amount per year on a safety who's north of 30, he also made a comment replying to someone that his role got changed. And
I saw that.
to the post. And I thought that was weird. That was a weird thing to say, and that's probably not something the team would be super thrilled about him putting on. Because it said he's saying they intentionally moved him away from the ball. And I don't know, what does that mean? Does that mean they intentionally did it as a negotiation tactic or something like that? Or is he just saying they did it because they had to, and so that affected his number of turnovers? I have no idea, but that was a weird thing to say. I would just say that I would hesitate paying someone on the wrong side of 30 at a skill position like that. It's a little bit different than an offensive or even defensive lineman.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I will say this too. The more he talks and brings up points like that, the more the outrage grows. I think the less interested the team is, because bad pub isn't good pub.
Right.
I do not believe any good publicity is good. Any publicity is good publicity. I do not believe that at all when it comes to this sport. So we'll see. Radir, hope you're doing well. Brazil, I believe. Cheers. Do you think, and thank you, I'm glad you enjoy what we're doing. Do you think that Andy Reid had something to PM, said something to PM in locker room that cause PM to look out of sync? I do not. I actually fear that he didn't say enough or anything at all. And it has been, because of Mahomes' big plays, has grown to be hands-off too much. He still is a fifth-year player at this point and does need guidance. As great as he is, I think he needs a steady hand.
I have no idea. That's how I'll say it. Andy Reid was mad heading into halftime. He told the sideline reporter as much.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't think it's just so weird, the idea of Mahomes having the yips at all. Just because he has overcome tough stuff. I mean, he overcame in the Super Bowl winning season the mentality it takes to get past your knee getting dislocated and trusting it again and playing the way he did down the stretch. And I don't just mean playing really well, which he did, but I mean playing with that kind of reckless abandon the way he did. That requires a mental fortitude that it just is hard for me to believe that something someone said got him out of whack. I think he got out of whack, and there weren't a lot of opportunities to make it right.
I'm with you. Quick pivot. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate you for the support, as always. What's your favorite Olympic winter sport?
I kind of like the ones, anything with skis where they get like 1,000,000 feet in the air, because it seems impossible. Every time I watch it, I wonder, like, what does that feel like if you're that person? Like, you're like
dying.
Yeah, you're like hundreds of feet in the air. That's insane. And so I like that just because I'm like, wow, respect. I could never do that.
I myself am a fan of biathlon. I think that's a really interesting sport that requires multiple disciplines that are on the different ends of athleticism.
That is
Thank
cool.
you, Judge. Aaron, would love to see Mahomes in the QB Challenge of the Pro Bowl. Are we going to see it? I doubt it. I think he needs to just chill, and I'll bet you he's in the mood to just chill because that's what he needs.
They seem like they're having fun there. And I would be, let me just tell you, it's not like Mahomes never lost anything before. He got over a really tough AFC Championship loss once. He'll do it again. That is one thing I've had a lot of people ask me, like, am I afraid this will affect Mahomes permanently? I'm not. No. He's got much more mental fortitude than that.
I agree. We're going to race through these because we are running out of time. So, Bill, what did the Bengals do well in the second half that contributed to the struggles specifically? Sure. I just feel, honestly, with so few and so little room to throw the ball with that many defenders in space, I think it just kind of locked him up, his rhythm and timing. What else was on top of that?
I mean, they didn't really do it. I mean, they ran some good pattern match stuff, angling their double. They haloed Kelsey and Hill pretty well. It wasn't stuff that they didn't do at all in the first half, though. That was one thing that surprised me. I really thought maybe it was true that they waited and then unleashed a bunch of stuff they weren't ready for. Mahomes just handled identical situations differently. But what I would say is the Bengals played very well and very disciplined football, making it to where you had to play well to beat them, and Mahomes wasn't playing well. So that, if that sounds like a roundabout answer, it kind of is. But they made it to, they didn't make any mistakes. They didn't give him anything to feast on. Although, again, but like that Hardman snap that I got them describing at length as a good example, they didn't do anything there. The concept defeated them, and he just didn't make the throw.
And you don't make the throw, you can't make the catch.
And some of those plays where he drifted too far and was doing that stuff, it's not because of any pressure that they had.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you. Chris, thank you. Finally, let me out of the straitjacket. Please tell me everything's going to be okay this season. I don't want to suffer any flashbacks. Please, Seth, be the counselor.
I mean, the reality is things are different now. You just watched a Super Bowl win 2 years ago. They've been to the AFC Championship 4 years in a row. This is life as a perennial contender. And we all have to get used to that. It's going to involve some tough losses. Go back and really look at Tom Brady's history. Now, they won like 3 or 4 pretty early, which is good. But then look at the 10-year drought where they lost a bunch of huge games. That happens. That's life as a perennial contender. It's going to involve more heartbreak, but you don't need to suffer any flashbacks because Patrick Mahomes is still your quarterback. This is still a different era. That's why it's so shocking. If this were previous eras with previous quarterbacks, we'd be like, well, of course it happened.
Yeah. And at this point, you're within striking distance perennially because of his presence.
Absolutely.
Real Minnesota Chiefs fan, that's great. Somebody stole your tag. I like it. Is Reed the offensive Schottenheimer enough to win, but without a generational quarterback may not be good enough to win it all? No.
Nah.
No.
No, and I understand. Reed, I think, made a critical tactical error. That's my big hope that they get another voice in the room this offseason that is willing to talk to everyone. And I hope Andy Heck becomes a louder voice in the room saying, we have an offensive line that is a weapon now. What are we going to do about it? Because teams are playing us a certain way. What are we going to do here? And that, if he doesn't adjust to that at all, then I'm going to worry more. But the past concepts were still there in the second half. He made some grievous errors that hurt them, but he wasn't the primary culprit.
Yeah, I agree. And another one from him as well. Do you think that because of the difference that he might have an undiagnosed concussion symptom? I do not. I think the protocol is sound. I think it's backed by medicine. I am not concerned about that. I think, honestly, if anything, it is just the ups and downs and everything that Patrick's gone through, including having a baby, having distractions at home with spouses and brothers. I think it's just a lot. And I think part of the offseason has to be about controlling what he can control in his life outside of this game. So hopefully we'll see more of that. Judge, thank you again. I'll always be here.
I appreciate you, Judge.
As do we all. Thank you very much. Yes, Poles is gone from the front office as well. He's now the GM in Chicago. It will have an effect. I can't say it will be negative because the one thing that Veach has done very well is Poles has been there a very long time. And they groom from the top up. It's a big scouting department, just as the Reed staff on the coaching side is big. There is enough room. Mike Borgonzi is still here. Brantillis is still here. There are a number of players. Ryan Nutt, I expect to be elevated, and I believe he will become a bigger factor in this, which means the SEC portion is going to be, I think, a little bit more confident in what they have and the connections and everything they get from the best conference in college football. I think that may play a bigger role going forward as well. So just keep an eye on that. Zulu, lucky to live in KC. What a team. You're absolutely right. And thank you, Zulu. We appreciate the support. Cole, with the departure of Kafka, I actually heard this on the radio. Who will replace him? I knew we were going to get to this question. There are a number of candidates. David Girardi is the assistant quarterbacks coach right now. If Andy does what Andy does a lot and just wants to, elevate from within, he may have a shot at that.
Yeah.
The EB thing complicates things because now who would normally ascend to OC is gone, which I think opens the door more for a return of Matt Nagy. What do you think?
I think that would be the most obvious move. Although if you bring back Matt Nagy, you are tacitly understanding it. I don't know if Matt Nagy will get another head coach shot. And so if you bring him in, if Bieniemy leaves, you're kind of setting yourself up for what your OC is going to be, barring firing him for a while.
True.
And that's at least worth noting. And I don't know if Nagy, we know Nagy can help the offense, though. We know he can. I don't think he's a head coach guy, but we know he can help the passing offense and maybe the offense overall here. He left after, was it 18 or 19?
I wanted to say it was after 19.
And I think he might have some stuff to add. I'd love to see them bring in some fresh thoughts and minds just to kind of allow Andy to continue tweaking things, but we'll see.
Agreed. And so, folks, keep an eye on the Bills staff, the Ravens staff, the Washington football staff. I'm sorry, the Commanders staff. I'm still having trouble with that. People that are within trees, that are within Andy's tree.
Yep.
Keep an eye on those teams. Madman, thank you. 4 third-round draft picks in the next 2 years. In 22 and 23, if EB is actually hired, not just interviewed, hired, add any comp picks for free agency. What do you think the move up in the draft? Maybe the Eagles at 19. I don't think there's anybody in this draft worth moving up for. I think they stand pat wherever they draft in the first round this year. Next season might be a completely different thing, but in this draft class, everything that I've seen, and yes, folks, I saw a lot of questions. I am working away on the draft. I'm building out my team. We're doing more film this year. All kinds of things, as well as expanding what Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting does. So there's plenty coming for you there. I don't think they move up this season. Thank you again, Real Minnesota. I'm not going to say the whole thing and steal your thunder. But it seems like...
That's exactly what I just said. So clearly, great Minnesotan minds think alike.
He's cloning your brain as well as your tag. Dang, that's crazy. Tom, thank you. Great job. Do you think that the Chiefs will become a defense-dominated Super Bowl winning team like the Patriots? Will they be forever offense? They will, as long as Andy Reid is here, bombs away.
I would be less surprised to see them like triple down on a crazy wide receiver signing than I would be to see them. Actually, I think they'll make some big splash with defensive line, whether they do it via trade or like if the Cowboys part ways with, if they let Gregory walk or they let Lawrence walk, because they really have 3 edges right now and you can't live that. Well, you can, but they're not maybe maximizing I don't know. You got to get Micah Parsons on the edge full time. I know they love moving him around, but that guy's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But like, I wouldn't be totally surprised to see them try to make a splash with Von Miller or whoever, right? Like just a big time whatever. But I also wouldn't shock me to see them say if the Bucks let like Chris Godwin go, with them dropping a big stack of cash on a wide receiver, and then all of Twitter saying they can't keep getting away with this because it's Andy Reid and Andy Reid is offense first. That's just how it is.
I'll tell you this too. I think Godwin is more likely to leave Tampa Bay now. I think OBJ is more likely to leave LA. I think if the Juju thing is real, I could see 2 of them coming here. I can see them.
Allen Robinson coming off a bad year. Well, not a bad year, but a down year for him. Struggled with injury, hated where he was at. You could tell he might be looking for a fresh start. And Allen Robinson, it's easy to forget now after a down year. He's a stud. So, I mean, there's options there, but it's always going to be an offensive first team with Reid and Mahomes.
No matter what. Thank you, Tom. Judge, thank you. I still don't like Joe Burrow. It's okay. Joe's a little, sometimes he's cool, sometimes he's a little out there, but that's okay. I like the kid. I just don't like having to play him.
Yep.
Miss Holly, thank you as always. Our progenitor here of all the support. Thank you very much. First,
thank you, Holly.
Thanks for all who sent the good thoughts for something I've been wanting to happen for a long time. It happened. Good. I'm glad. That is great. Man, we're very happy to hear that. Question. At this stage in Andy's career, do you think that he is really capable of making changes, adjustments to his coaching, or is he just stuck the way he is? I think philosophically he is stuck, like we were saying. He's not going to change his feathers. But I think he is still a very creative person, X's and O's. I think he will continue to come up with wrinkle after wrinkle and newness at the play level.
Part of me wonders if the offensive line wasn't a year ahead of schedule this year, and they didn't have packages rolled out as fast as they might have. And that's something I'm going to watch for next year. Not necessarily expect them to become a run-dominating team. That'll never be Andy, but maybe more efficient with their usage of how they run the ball and what they do. It felt like maybe they were a year ahead of schedule with the offensive line rebuild, because I don't think they expected Trey Smith to be that good. I don't think they expected – otherwise they would have drafted him before the 6th. I don't think they even expected Creed Humphrey to be that good. And so I know they expected Joe Tooney to be that good. That's why they signed him for what they did. And Orlando Brown, actually, I would argue, I'm going to see what I think after I review his film. He's going to be one of the first big offseason film reviews. But I think he adapted the offense maybe even a little faster than they might have thought.
Yeah, and I think there's still plenty of room to go there. That's one of the things in the offseason we're going to talk about, because there's a couple of non-first-round tackles that I think they could find interesting if they want to follow the trends that they've been showing us the last 2 seasons. So pay attention to that. Ms. Holly, again, thank you for your undying support. We very much appreciate you. Wes, do you guys think what do you think is the plan on defense? Wonder if firing Spags and revamping the entire defense might be a good idea. I don't think that's happening. I'll just tell you straight out.
No. And you got to remember, it wasn't but 5 weeks ago that people were talking about Spags as a potential assistant coach of the year. Spags is a good defensive coordinator. I don't really put much of that loss on him, because honestly, okay, let's think about this. Where is the blame for Spags on Charvarius Ward missing that tackle on that first touchdown? That's not on Spags. Chris Jones, great player, best player on the defense. We can have a whole conversation about him,
and we will.
Yeah, because they every year people circle it back to him, and it's just like,
4
what?
Punts.
Oh, yeah.
Defense did enough to win that game.
4 punts and a pick.
Yep. Oh,
yep.
yeah.
And Jones having Burrow just made a couple of great plays. He wriggled free. What are you going to do? There really wasn't anything schematic. They adjusted well. The first third down the Bengals faced, they showed single high against Jamar Chase, and then they rotated Matthew in at the last second. It was an awesome adjustment, and it totally screwed up Burrow's reads, and they ended up punting. The defense did, by and large, enough to win that game.
Okay, not going to go there. We'll do that another day. Wes, thank you. Appreciate you. And yes, everybody give Holly a hand. I know you're just sitting at home watching stuff. Give Holly a hand, will you? That's awesome. Ben, thank you. Did Patrick think that in the second half was going to be the same as the first half? Did he trick himself mentally? It, like Seth has said, it was the same. So no, I don't think he tricked himself into what his expectation was. I think there was something else going on just with the execution of the plays. It was not confusion, I doubt. Lil Fix, thank you. Thoughts on Jermaine Johnson and Christian Watson? I talked to both of them this week. Jermaine Johnson is light years ahead of Josh Kando when he was drafted. That should give you an inkling. He was the most complete defensive end down here at the Senior Bowl. By and large, not even close. Is he explosive enough to be an impact defensive end at 30 or whatever the Chiefs get to pick? It's borderline. I think he's a top 50 pick. I don't know if he makes it into the first round. Christian Watson is in a similar situation. He's raised his value, He's approaching the top 100, but he's not in there yet. So there's a lot of this offseason yet to come, and I will be covering it in depth all the time. I might even give you guys a little bit more of a breakdown on those two guys here starting. I'm going to do some quick cuts. I know a lot of people want some shorter videos. I'll give you some of those starting definitely next week, but maybe even tomorrow. I don't know. See what I get done tonight before I get on playing in the morning. Big Chief Sean was our guest on the Huddle this week. Thank you, Stevie. Appreciate that. We have 3, 4, or 5 episodes. Wow, that's incredible. That is a lot of content, and I love that. 30 minutes is probably the most acceptable in terms of people watching. So just tell you that one. Currently editing 3+ hours of content. You rock, Stevie. Man, folks, make sure you like and sub and hit the bell right now, or you're going to miss out on Stevie, Gooch's, and Sean's stuff. You need to see it. Seth, Aaron would like you to say something.
I'm sure he would. I'm not sure I can bring myself. What is that line? I would do anything for love.
Oh,
I won't do that. But you should smash that thumbs up for Ryan Tracy, who is quite tasty. I'll say it that way. How's that? That's better.
Well done. Very lyrical you just did. I like it. Ryan, have you started scouting players for the draft and she's being out of the postseason? If so, who are you liking? I have started. Honestly, I started during the season in some of my 5 seconds of spare time every week. And I do have a couple of guys. I'll give you a couple of sleeper names at the wide receiver position. I love Jarrett Stearns. I think he's going to be kind of like Watson and maybe might scratch in the top 100. He could definitely be had by where the Chiefs are picking. And he is a built like a tank slot receiver that can actually break tackles once he has the ball in his hand. So it would allow McColl to get a little bit more free releases, and I love him. And Khalil Shakir is the other one from Boise State. Check out both those guys, Mark. Howard, thank you. If you would have told me in 2013 my Chiefs would go to 4 straight AFC championship games, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and win one, I would have told you to sign me up. It's a great time to be a fan.
In 2013, we were still hoping for them to end the 20-year playoff drought.
We were still hoping to get rid of Todd Haley, right? Am I wrong?
13, I think, was Reed's first year. No, Haley was gone because 2012 was the Crennel year. 2013. Right. And so, this is when Reed was coming in.
Yeah.
And so that is important for context. And that doesn't mean, whenever someone says, we can't be satisfied, we'll get complicit. No, we won't. We're not the team. I'm just saying I'm very, very happy the team is at where it's at.
I'm completely with you. All right, we're going to wrap it up here in a second, folks. The last Super Chats and another question. Appreciate your time tonight. I know it's been kind of a weird week. We will get back on schedule. We will talk Chiefs draft specifically. I'm going to start doing mock drafts every week. I know everybody loves mocks. I'm going to change it up. I do one for the national show on Locked On NFL Draft. You can listen to that here on YouTube or on any free platform. I will do them Chiefs specific as well. Maybe I'll get Seth to even do something with me. We'll see what happens. Should be kind of fun.
If you don't mind guessing, maybe I'll do more draft content this year. We'll see.
Maybe he will. Glass half full. Thank you, Tom. As Seth said, it will be in the conversation for SN. As long as Pat and Andy Reid are here. Embrace
Typo. N and B are right next to each other.
Okay.
He meant Super Bowl.
Okay, rock and roll. I'm glad you're here for this. Thank you, Tom. I'm totally with you. Nothing is. I can't even say that. It's a Lebowski quote. Nothing is hosed here, people. Everything's going to be okay. It's a bump in the road. Bill, thank you. If eBay is hired in New Orleans, is Greg Lewis the new OC? No. I will say that definitively.
I've never seen Reed go that route in terms of it's almost always assistant QB coaching.
The idea is to diversify his experience in coaching. He's been with the running backs one season. He is not ready. Andy Reid won't think that he's ready. He needs to build that up. Even if he goes the EB route, which is rare, like Seth said, and doesn't eventually become a quarterback coach first, he still needs a couple of years doing something other than wide receivers. Flapjack, thank you. That made Mahomes gun shy.
I mean, I suppose that I think it started, but I think it started the previous drive. I really do. But I do think that did participate or that did contribute to it for sure. I think that was part of it because that was not a good read.
Yeah, it was a little concerning. And I wouldn't say gun shy. I would say a little bit conservative. But Lil Fix, great question. If you have to pick one option to pick, Tyron and Quentin Diggs or Quentin Diggs and Jabril Peppers, plus the extra cap space. What do you got?
I'm going to get myself in trouble here. Honestly, I'd probably take Diggs and Peppers.
Same cost, two players. You have to shed money here in order to pay for Orlando and Tyreek and Patrick's. Although you're going to see Patrick convert his salary and do the dance again. They will get a big chunk back, but it's still.
Diggs and Peppers are good safeties. Mm-hmm. They're not as good as Matthew, but give me two good safeties over one really good safety.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. And you got Juan in there to play the dime. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. Great show. Excellent questions and convo for the Rogues and Roguettes. We're very glad to have all of you. If you want to join the memberships, that's how you get in the Discord, and that's how you get the extra videos like the Rogue Life from Gooch that went up this afternoon. So if you are a member and you haven't seen it yet, go check the membership playlist. It's specifically for you guys. You guys have a great night. I'll be traveling back, should be back on Sunday. I'm going to do either a quick live stream like breakdown on Sundays, or I might start pre-recording Sunday for you guys, but we will have content still Sunday through, Monday, like normal. So it's just going to shift some. I look forward to talking to all of you. Thank you for all the contributors tonight. Ms. Holly, you most of all. Thank you, Seth, for taking your time.
Of course. And hey, everyone, thank you for watching. And I'm excited for what comes next here. It's been a long day, so if I seem like I'm slowly losing energy, that's why. But it's been a fun season. I'm really glad that before the season, Ryan, you talked me into doing this.
Yeah, I'm very thankful. Well, we're going to talk a lot about maybe even some draft things. And Aaron, you're right. The picks pool. The picks pool is in the memberships. Got to get that too. Maybe you ought to do some picks for the basketball tournament, Aaron. I'm just saying. Nothing. Rock Chalk Go KU. Anyway, you guys have a great night. We'll talk to you on Sunday.